Well, we have 28 games, well, now 27 games now for the Philadelphia 76ers, and they're really trying to dig themselves out of the hole that they put themselves in the first half of this season. And one of the names that we have talked about, not only in the offseason, but with the open roster spot that they had for so long, you also wrote about him, I believe, in December. And that's Lonnie Walker. You also had a tweet a little bit earlier in the week on Tuesday about the possibility of him staying in Lithuania because he did not get to the buyout deadline on time. And then things flipped a little bit for Walker, his representation, and the Sixers got into the mix. So with him agreeing to the 2-year deal, how did all of it come together?
Well, yeah, I think if you go back and look at my tweet on Tuesday, this wasn't just me reporting it. This was Lonnie Walker's own agent saying basically that the clock had run out. The way the contract was structured, he had until February 18th to find an NBA home. And it was interesting that the team in Lithuania, BC Zalgiris, that they were okay with granting that. I mean, it was a bold move on their part, too, to be able to get. Look, I think everybody would agree. Lonnie Walker went to camp with the Celtics. He's an NBA player. I mean, I think people were shocked when he went straight to Europe. The Celtics couldn't keep him. I think the Celtics wanted to keep him out of training camp, but just couldn't do it because of their luxury tax situation. So Lonnie Walker decides, instead of trying to go the G League route to stay relevant, I'm going to go to the Euro League. And to get him, the team in Lithuania says, okay, we're going to give you an out. You can leave us in the middle of the season in February 18th if a deal surfaces. But on February 18th, I spoke to his agent, George Langberg, and their view was at that point that they had interest, but there weren't any offers at that point that they wanted to leave the EuroLeague for. And then I think you saw Lonnie Walker himself tweet that at about 10 p.m. Europe time, Lithuania time on Tuesday night, that's when the Sixers ramped up their interest. And you said it well. I think the Sixers have always been interested in Lonnie Walker. I think he's a player they've been monitoring all season. And I do appreciate, shout out actually to Adam Aronson for finding what I wrote in December, because frankly, I'm old and I had forgotten that I had written that in December. But Philly has been tracking him all year long. And look, you heard Nick Nurse tonight before the game talk about Eric Gordon's situation, how they've seen multiple doctors. They can't figure out this wrist thing. Eric Gordon shot the ball so well in January. The Sixers were getting trade interest for Eric Gordon before this trade deadline, when teams around the league were trying to figure out if the Sixers would just say, you know what, let's tank. Let's trade all our veterans and see what we can get for them. There was a lot of interest, obviously, in Yabusele. The Sixers were never trading Yabusele, but Eric Gordon, Andre Drummond, the Sixers could have traded those guys. And, Eric Gordon shot the ball really well in January before this wrist thing sidelined him. But the way it was explained to me was the Sixers on Tuesday, as the clock was ticking down, their urgency ramped up and realized, you know what, we've liked Lonnie Walker anyway. Let's bring him in. In classic Daryl Morey fashion, they come up with a deal that goes beyond this season. So if things work out, the Sixers would be in position to retain him. And, again, I think if you really talk to people around the league, there was a lot of surprise that Lonnie Walker wasn't in the league all season. I mean, and, my theoretical hat was off to him to go to Europe and try to do it another way instead of going to the G League just to stay close. Because people always talk about the G League as, the most scouted league because of obvious proximity to the NBA. But he took on a bold challenge, went to faraway Lithuania, stepped into the Euro League, which is a completely different situation, but incredible crowds, incredible stakes every game. And, it worked out for him. And he's back in the NBA where I think he always wanted to be.
Mark, another transaction that the Sixers made that I want your perspective on, because you are near the other side of it, is something that we didn't really expect, and that is the Quentin Grimes for Caleb Martin swap. And obviously there was an extra pick thrown out after Caleb Martin's physical down in Dallas. I guess just as somebody who has been around the Mavericks a lot, What was their perspective on making that trade and kind of what happened behind the scenes with them determining, okay, we will cash in Quentin Grimes and take on Caleb Martin here?
I have to say that Quentin Grimes played really well in Dallas after a slow start. It was surprising that the Mavericks were willing to move him, but Dallas needed length on the wing. And Caleb Martin, when healthy, he provides a level of experience, length on defense, playoff resume that Dallas didn't have. Caleb Martin is also signed to a 4-year deal just south of $30 million, which I think from the Dallas perspective was attractive from a team contract control point of view. Whereas if you remember, Quentin Grimes was eligible for a rookie scale extension up until the day before the season started. He and the Mavs could not come to an agreement on a deal. And I think Caleb Martin was signed in the financial range that the Mavs would have liked to have signed Quentin Grimes way back in October. But when the Mavs did the physical with Caleb Martin, they clearly saw something they didn't like. From the Sixers' perspective, I think they felt like Caleb Martin was very close to returning from injury. So the Mavericks were in position to do what we saw the Lakers do with Mark Williams. The Mavericks could have avoided that trade, but instead, both teams got together with the league office. The Sixers said they would be willing to add a second-round pick to the trade. Remember, the original trade construction was only Philly getting a second along with Quentin Grimes for Caleb Martin. The Sixers threw in a second, and the Mavs decided instead of voiding it, let's take this second from Philly and let's see how quickly we can get Caleb Martin back on the floor. And look, the reality is in Dallas, we still don't have a timetable for when Caleb Martin is going to play. It's not clear. Again, I think the Sixers felt like he was very close to returning. But, in Dallas, a team that has just been racked with injuries. I mean, the Mavs they're out. They're 4 centers injured right now. I mean, they have become like what the Pelicans were going through in October, November, December. That's what the Mavericks have been going through. And obviously, after the Luka Doncic trade, there is tons of urgency in Dallas to not just win, but make a playoff run. So they really need Caleb Martin to heal and get back as quickly as possible to help them on the wing, in addition to Anthony Davis, Derek Lively II, Daniel Gafford. Jason Kidd came out today and said March 6th will be a huge evaluation day where all 3 of those bigs, the Mavericks are hoping for a meaningful update on all 3 of those guys. But it's been interesting too. Like Caleb Martin, we've only seen him on the bench in street clothes, but I remember one of his first games in Dallas, getting right up during a game and talking strategy with Kyrie Irving during the game. That was very interesting to me. It kind of jumped off the page to me, like how comfortable he already felt as a veteran, a guy who's been around for a while to, speak his mind on, what he was seeing on the floor. Obviously, we're not privy to what was said because it's loud, it's during the game. But I thought that was interesting that Caleb Martin, as a relative newcomer to the Mavs, was ready to kind of jump in and get in that live in-game discussion.
Marc Stein of the DLLS Mavs, and of course the Marc Stein Substack, joining us here on this PHLY Sixers postgame show. Rich Hoffman, Devon Givens with you. And you said, Mark, the sense of urgency on the Dallas side. Well, we've talked to you a number of times during the season, and there's a big sense of urgency that we've been waiting for with the Philadelphia 76ers. And after tonight's game against the Boston Celtics, just 27 games. But again, they're not out of it because of where they are in the Eastern Conference with the play-in and teams surrounding them. With that sense of urgency, we've had, of course, the Embiid injury dealing with, the incorporation of new players, to your point, of Quentin Grimes, later on Lonnie Walker, and also the Paul George piece of it. So with 27 games and the sense of urgency for Philadelphia from afar, when you look at this one, and again, us saying this multiple times when we've had a chance to speak, what do you see from this team going forward, trying to get Embiid, George, and Maxey on the same page while also trying to get things going with some new pieces in town?
Look, I'm as surprised as you guys. I cannot believe they are still struggling to the degree that we've seen. I actually posted my power rankings before all tonight's games. It's kind of a tradition. I've started to do it to kind of post a pulse. I don't do power rankings every week like I used to in my ESPN days. I only do them like 5 or 6 times during the season, but I always like to post power rankings coming right out of the All-Star break. Like, let's take a 1 to 30 pulse of where the league is. And it's like, it's the East, so the Sixers cannot fall out of this playoff race even if they wanted to. I mean, Chicago, they started the night ahead of Philly, but Chicago lost its last 4 games before the break by an average of 25. They were down 101-52 at one point to Detroit. I think we see the direction that the Bulls are going. The Sixers are going to, at worst,
by the way,
10th.
The Sixers host the Bulls on next Monday.
Like, the Sixers are finishing 10th. I mean, that's the worst it's going to be. I don't think they can avoid it again. I don't think they can avoid it if they want to. But it is also still crazy to think that, going into tonight, I think we had seen Embiid, Maxey, and Paul George together only 13 times in 54 games. And this was the team that all the know-it-alls like me said the Sixers won the offseason. They are the champs of July, August, and September. And they started the night 14 games under 500, seeing their big three play together only 13 times. Like, you couldn't write this. I mean, nobody thought that this was the kind of season we were going to get out of the Sixers. That all of that said, Miami, Philly, I will not be surprised if those are the 2 teams that come out of the play-in round. And I don't think Cleveland or Boston will be terribly excited about seeing the Sixers in round 1. It doesn't mean Philly is going to go on some amazing playoff run. I am not going to promise that to you on whatever today is, February 20th. I think we need to see a little more. We need to see a little bit more go right before anybody goes that far. But I don't think the Cavs or the Celtics would love the idea of a round 1 series against the Sixers team with nothing to lose.
And it was something that a few of the players, Mark, on Tuesday and Wednesday before post-practice mentioned that this tournament was built for a team like the 76ers, trying to get themselves situated, trying to find, Kelly Oubre said it, holding things down until everyone got back together, as you just laid out, where teams may not want to see them in the play-in and certainly as a first-round matchup as an 8 or 7 seed.
I mean, look, you guys know I live in Dallas. I just watched a Mavericks team without home court advantage find a way to go all the way to the finals.
Yeah.
They beat 350 win teams to do it and then had to deal with the Celtics in the finals, and the Celtics were just too good. Again, I'm not going to sit here and say something crazy like, the Sixers have had so many issues this season just getting their best guys on the floor. Does anyone dare dream that they could win multiple rounds and have a full strength team for multiple rounds? Like, it's way too soon to go that far. But again, if they get out of the play-in round, and they're probably gonna have to win 2 games. So probably the best they can do is the 8th seed. Like I said, I don't think Cleveland would love that series. I think the Sixers can certainly cause them some problems. But let's deal with getting out of the play-in round and getting to that first round series first. Like I said, the Sixers are good. They're going to be in the play-in tournament to me. I just don't think Chicago is going south, and the Nets do not want to be in the play-in round. I know they went 6-1 before the break, but the Nets do not want the 10th seed either. So I think at worst, the Sixers will finish 10th. And then, let's see. But I also have a feeling that I can't see the chat. I can't see the PHLY chat. But something tells me that, being a plucky number 8 seed that the Cavs don't want to see was not really the expectation of anybody who's watching us tonight.
Not at all. Not at all.
We all silly like the mayor.